Today we are going to have a look at a different blade than last time. This is very cheap. Will it be even worth it? I don't know. Have a look first at the tests that we are going to go through, and then we can wrap it up and have an informed opinion on this blade. The blade that we are testing is the Decathlon SOLOGNAC Sika 130. 130 centimeters of stainless steel, which is marketed as a bushcraft or survival blade. We will see if it is really something like that. Enjoy. Not as good as I thought it would be with this kind of grind. Still doesn't split the wood as I wish it would. I was expecting more because of the grinding of this blade, which is almost a Scandi. The wedge effect is not as good as I thought. I know that this is a very seasoned and hard wood, but it is exactly the same wood I've used in the last few tries with other knives. So I know the feeling of this, and I was expecting much more. Plus, it is painful on your hands, and so I'm using gloves right now. No chipping. So now I'm gonna use the knife to cut through this rope because it's more of a test for edge retention. This rope is a climbing rope, so it's quite hard to go through it. And I'm gonna test especially this part that is quite sore because this is a very sharp angle. So let's go through this. Okay, that's it. Let's go through the cardboard it came with. It's already difficult to cut through easily through the cardboard. So after all the tests, the batoning, chopping, cutting through cardboard, cutting through the rope, let's see the edge retention. So this part is more dull, the part that I've been using more for the rope. I don't use fancy stuff, simple stone. This is the same rope I was using before, and as you could see, it goes through it very well right now. So it took literally not even 5 minutes of sharpening it, and it works again. The steel used here is nitrox, which is a stainless steel with around 16% of chromium. We were going to expect to have not such a good edge retention, especially with the 55 of HRC. But one of the selling points is that it's a stainless steel. So we are going to test even that one. Right? Basically, I'm going to recreate the conditions of a wet day in the woods. No salt added to it because when it rains, usually doesn't have salt, at least in my knowledge. So I'm going to put it under water and leave it in the air without drying it. And let's check how good it is, and even the plastic part of the handle. So before the final thoughts on the knife, I want to say there is no rust. After leaving the knife with the water and drying out in the air to recreate a wet day in the woods. And then now my opinion on this knife. So I'm gonna try to be as objective as possible. I'm gonna tell you that this part of the knife is still sticking out from the handle, and that I thought at the beginning that it was not going to be an issue, but during batoning and chopping, it created a sore spot here that was almost creating blisters. It is deceptively comfortable in your hands when you grab it, but you immediately then start to feel that there is this one sticking out, and it is not very comfortable, especially when the knife is moving in your hands with this kind of direction, or even with batoning that is moving this way or this way. The other issue I have is another sore spot. It's here in the finger, because this part of the guard is very sharp, is squared and sharp. So when you work wood in this way, it is very sore because it goes exactly there where your finger is. Talking about then cutting performance, it was dull after not too many cuts through the rope and the cardboard, but that was expected. The steel that they used is the nitrox, which is a stainless steel with 16% of chromium, and it is very similar to another knife that I have here, which is the 12C27 Sandvik, which is a steel that you find not just in this knife by aaknives.au, but even in Brisa knives, if I remember correctly. So these two steels are very similar in terms of performance and in terms of stainless steel. But I found out that this one, probably because there is a different heat treatment, this one holds the edge much longer. And not just that, but it feels like it's going through the wood much easier because of the kind of the grind. And this is the other issue here. The HRC of this one is only 55, and not just that, but is very close to the edge, the beginning of the grinding, so it's not really working that well even when you are trying to go through wood. The batoning and the chopping are not great at all. As I was saying, the HRC is 55, so we were expecting a duller edge after a few goes on to the rope, but at least it's very easy to resharpen. I mean, I resharpen it with a simple stone. I wouldn't do that in a very nice knife, but in the field you can use that one and you can easily resharpen it. Final considerations. What is this knife for and for whom? One of the selling points of this knife is the price, is 46 euro, which is very cheap. I'm wondering why they targeted that price range. Probably because with this size is 13 centimeters, the blade. This size is the cheapest in the market. If I am correct, with the stainless steel, there is no Brisa and no Mora at that price range with this length of the blade. So I think the marketing department probably targeted the price range of around 45-50 as a price where you could sell this knife for anybody who is not too much into knives but needs a knife for bushcraft. But is this really a knife for bushcraft? For sure, it's not for survival. Anybody who is really into survival will get annoyed immediately by the sharpness of this part of the blade, of this part of the handle, and this part of the guard. So is this for bushcraft? You say, yeah, maybe I just needed to cut through food and so on, because for sure you are not going to use it for chopping because it's far too sore, and so at the end is you're going to use it just for cutting through food. But don't you think you can find something fancier and less expensive than 50 euro just to cut food? I think so. Opinel is one that comes to mind. Then might be for someone who is worried about using his fancy knife to ruin the fancy knife, and so it says, okay, I'm going to use just this one, and I don't have that much money, so I still going to go for this. Okay, just one point on that. Have you ever found yourself buying something that you thought, okay, at that price is good, and then you realize that it's not worth it, not even that money, and you are going to throw it away quite quickly? I think that this is one of those things. This is one of those knives that you buy just for the price, and then as soon as you start using it, you regret buying it. Sorry to say that, but what they did with this is basically they just changed the steel. And because they were worried that people with batoning and chopping were going to break it or chip it. But that's not all you need a knife for. But the batoning is not the most important thing. So I guess that in this regard, there is even a little bit of the blame is even to us, because we are always showing that we are batoning through wood with knife, but that's not the main purpose of a knife. Those of you that they say, okay, I still work with a knife because I have to cut through, because I'm an electrician, because I am cutting through regularly, cutting through cardboard or cutting through plastic, and I don't care about a fancy knife. Okay, but that only if you're gonna use gloves, because otherwise you're gonna regret it. In terms of price, are you really sure you cannot go even double that? This is a knife that is double this one, but it is much more comfortable in your hand, has a better edge retention. It is much better in terms of splitting wood. So even if you are working with a knife and you just want a workhorse, as something reliable that you can smash through, that you don't care if you break it. This is a knife of that kind. Is a little bit shorter, but more, maybe just 1 centimeter. Or you can go with other brands. I'm just suggesting this because this is handmade, and so I have always a little bit of a soft spot for handmade products. Let's say that you are someone very concerned about price. I would suggest you just keep your knife, the one that you are still using, and save in the money for another month, and then you have enough money to buy a better knife than this one. So I'm sorry to say, but this is not the knife that I would recommend, even at this price range. Having said that, I hope you have a nice day and see you next time. Ciao!